Guys, can you believe it? The 2024 season is upon us, and we are already here to make our 2024 Bahrain Grand Prix predictions. Our first of the year, and I could not be more excited to jump on into it. But before we do, go ahead, hit that subscribe button down below if you enjoy talking and chatting about either sim racing or F1 and other motorsports as we try and expand going through this season. But we are here to make our predictions. So go ahead, subscribe down below, leave a like if you enjoy the video, and leave a comment down below what you think is going to happen this weekend in Bahrain. But let's go ahead, let's get this thing rolling immediately with our predictions. Now, there is going to be a slight change between last year's predictions and this year's predictions. Last year in their predictions, and even in our season predictions, I'll do my predictions, and then at the end of the video, I'll give my community's predictions because I enjoy giving them an opportunity to have their voices heard in the video as well. Discord link down below, by the way. But a change that we're going to be doing in terms of this season is instead of doing my predictions and then the community predictions at the end, during each prediction section, I'm just going to have a little box appear down here showing their predictions as we go. It's going to be a little easy now because there's only a few of us, so we'll tackle that problem as the community continues to grow. But that is going to be one change from last season's predictions to this season's predictions. I think it'll just make it a little more streamlined. Keep all the keep the topics in sync and not have to go through the same predictions again right at the end very quickly like I was before. So. But let's go ahead, let's jump on into it. Round one of the 2024 F1 season, Bahrain. Let's jump into our predictions. Kicking things off on a high note, biggest positive surprise for the weekend. And we're going a little off track already. I am one to enjoy a little bit of out of left field prediction, and this one is absolutely no different. My biggest positive surprise for Bahrain is Fernando Alonso. There's been a lot of talk about Aston Martin and their development over the end of last season as well as over the offseason and testing. I think Aston Martin is slowly kind of existing underneath the surface, and I think they're going to be and sneak up on some people if they're not ready, especially as it's the first round of the year. You don't know what you're going to see in terms of who was sandbagging in F1 testing, who was really just showing their true pace. So I think Aston Martin could be in an opportunity to kind of sneak up on some people. And we all know that Fernando Alonso loves starting off a season hot, just like he did last season, finishing on the podium in Bahrain out of absolutely nowhere. So I think he's going to be absolutely fired up for the start of the season. Another year in a car that's much better than the car he was in the year before before joining Aston Martin. So it's going to be an exciting one. I think Fernando Alonso, you are my pick for my biggest positive surprise. And to go over quickly, we have our community predictions down here. Like I mentioned, we have British TTG's prediction of Williams. He actually predicts a very strong weekend, including maybe even some points. And we have Sinnel 40 with a prediction of Mercedes potentially even being the second fastest car and finishing only behind the Red Bull. What do you think? Did they do well? Moving on now to our biggest disappointment prediction. In this one, I have gone for probably a very popular pick. I have chosen Alpine, the team, as my biggest disappointment. It seems like Alpine, after finishing best of the rest in 2022, have only been sliding backwards as this set of regulations has gone on. And the F1 testing results and what it seems to be going on in that team so far over this offseason does not bode well for the French outfit. And I think there's a real ominous feeling around that team right now. And I think this could come to a head right in the first round of this season. I say that, of course, now they're going to come out and put an absolute masterclass on us, but there's just a very odd feeling around Alpine right now, and I think it would be a very big disappointment to see the team fighting only a few years ago for top half, and even last year scoring very consistent points over the course of the season, but never really having the pace to truly challenge towards the front. And from the news that's coming out so far this year, it seems like they could once again be struggling at the beginning of the year and could find themselves towards the back if their own predictions are to be believed. And I think you just can't take those kinds of predictions lightly. And so unfortunately, Alpine, you are my pick for biggest disappointment this weekend around Bahrain. And then moving on to our community predictions down below, we have British also choosing Alpine, and we have Sino taking the easy choice of Haas. The Haas is not going to be good this year, and I am not looking forward to it as a Haas fan myself. Moving on now to our predictions for our qualifying and top three. Starting for my choice in P3, I have gone for Carlos Sainz. I think Carlos is going to be absolutely motivated to start this season, it being his last in Ferrari before Lewis Hamilton moves to the Scuderia in 2025. And I think that actually the Ferrari could surprise a lot of people, not in comparison to the Red Bull, because I think they're in a league of their own, but in terms of against the rest of the grid. And so I think Carlos could have a very solid weekend to open the 2024 season. I'm expecting to see it start nice and early around quali and putting it on in the second row, but in P3. Speaking of Ferrari, P2 in qualifying, I've gone for Charles Leclerc. Kind of along the same lines. I think Ferrari's going to absolutely surprise some people. And as much as we don't want to say it, I think Checo is going to struggle a little bit, maybe potentially to open the season. I know he does enjoy a good race around Bahrain, but for whatever reason, this sort of vibes around him in the Red Bull right now are just off. And until proven otherwise, I think Ferrari, especially Charles, could absolutely put in a very, very good lap, or in a Ferrari that seemed to be very good or in a single lap and struggled more in the race trim last season. And so I think we could see something similar again. Now, I would expect to see Checo move up over the course of the race, but in terms of qualifying pace, I think it could be a strong performance from Ferrari. And that leaves our only prediction remaining: pole position around Bahrain. It couldn't be literally anyone else. My pick for pole position, Max Verstappen. Do I really need to say anything at this one? I mean, he won 19 of the 23 races we had last season. He had one of the most dominant seasons in F1 history, and the car seems to have only gotten better over the course, proven over the course of the F1 testing, where I think it became pretty obvious that Red Bull was not showing their true colors and were holding back quite a lot, and he was still well fastest amongst everyone in quali trim. So I think this is basically Max's season to lose, whether you like it or not. And so it's going to be a struggle to watch, but hey, I'm going to take my free points when I can get them. Max Verstappen is my choice for pole position, and that rounds out my qualifying at top three. To very quickly run through our community predictions, we have British with a Max Verstappen pole, Charles Leclerc second, and Sergio Perez third, and Senel with also a pole, Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez second, and Charles Leclerc third. So a little bit of shuffle there, but it does seem to be a strong consensus outside of me that Checo could potentially do very, very well this weekend. I just need to see it first. That's all. Moving on now to our race podium prediction, our final top three after the race on Saturday. You'll notice on Saturday the race is this time, and so this is going to be our first podium of the year. Always an exciting one after the race is over. We'll start in P3, and my choice for the bottom step of the podium is Lewis Hamilton. Now, Lewis, you've burned me a few times towards the end of last season, but this one I think you might have an opportunity to make it work. Over the course of F1 testing, if you were to believe the statisticians out there and Mercedes themselves, the race pace of the W15 seems to perform very, very well and very consistently over the course of long, higher fuel stints. And so I think the race pace of the Mercedes could take a step forward that we saw towards, down the stretch last year, where their qualifying pace was not good and their strength was definitely in their race pace. If they were able to take an evolution of that, that strategy and potentially add some qualifying pace to it, I think Mercedes could be in a very strong position to put some very solid results on the board. And I think Lewis is definitely going to be wanting to come out in his final season with Mercedes, kind of like I mentioned with Carlos Sainz in the qualifying prediction, that I think he's going to want to come out and put in a very, very good result. And I think we could see it here round one in Bahrain. Moving on to my choice for second, I have gone for Charles Leclerc. Now, I think he'll fight along with Max at the front. Obviously, I have him and Max qualifying P1 and P2. And so I think he potentially could challenge Max a little bit, but the performance of the RB20 is going to be far better than anything that Ferrari could put out there as of right now. So Max, I think, will drive off into the distance, but I do think the Ferrari will do well enough to create a bit of a gap, and Charles should be able to come home and finish P2. I'm interested to see what happens there at the front. Will Max just kind of drive off into the distance? Who knows? Probably more than likely, but at the same time, this is why we go racing and we don't just hand out the trophy at the beginning of the season. So, Charles, let's make it interesting, all right? Let's see a good, fun race, I say, for all of us. And, of course, my choice for the race win, in which eventually, if he does win this race, I will be changing the name of this prediction to the official Max Verstappen race win prediction. So keep an eye out for that and for when we head to Jeddah next time out. But of course, my race win prediction is obviously Max Verstappen. I don't think anyone is predicting anything otherwise, unless they're doing it just for the memes. I mean, I've said pretty much all I've had to say about Max and the rocket ship that Red Bull has put him in. I think it's his season to lose. And until I said this a lot last year and it never really happened. Until I see it, I do not think anyone will take it from him. So Max, congratulations. You are my pick to win the first round in Bahrain this season. And then, of course, for our community predictions, to run through those quickly, we have British with a Max Charles Lewis as well. A bit of a consensus between them and me. And Sinnel has a Max Sergio Lewis prediction. He is a Sergio fan. We'll throw that in there. But we definitely wouldn't be too shocked to see Sergio have a good race as well. So let's go ahead and finish off with our final prediction. Let's wrap this thing up with our one crazy prediction for this weekend, and I will start things off nice and smoothly. We saw it a little bit of a sprinkling of this in F1 testing, and I think it could carry over to the next weekend, the first round. I think we'll see at least one mechanical DNF failure in the race. I think we saw this even last year, obviously with Charles famously going out in round one, and we saw some teams having issues with reliability so far already. I think we could see one mechanical failure DNF in the race this year to kind of shake things up. Where it's going to end up on the grid, I can only hope it ends up on a particular end of the grid, but my prediction nonetheless is going to be just that. A mechanical DNF will happen in the race this season. And to go and finish things up, our one crazy prediction from our community, we have British with he'll see a race-ending contact between Checo and Carlos Sainz. He thinks there's going to be a lot of adrenaline pumping between both of these guys, as they are both. Well, Carlos is already known to not have a Ferrari seat. Going into next season, a Checo's seat is warming up very, very quickly in the Red Bull. So he thinks they're going to see some race-ending contact between the two, which would definitely get the social media teams fired up immediately. And then finally, we have Senel with a Mercedes will finish third and fourth ahead of both Ferraris. He thinks they're going to come out and perform very admirably. It'll be interesting to see the order that he would have picked them in if he had given them. But what do you guys think? Let me know down below what your predictions are for the Bahrain Grand Prix. I can't wait to see cars out on track again in some meaningful sessions. I cannot wait to see it, and it's coming even to us a day earlier than normal, as since the races are moved forward to the first two rounds due to Ramadan over there in the Middle East. So I'm super duper excited to see this season. I hope you guys follow along, and I would love to know your predictions down below. But once again, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.